Hello, Magic players. Hope you're having a great day today. Wonderful spring 2026. I want to talk about my wish for Commander. And my wish for Commander, and has been for many years, that the wish cards should work in Commander. So if you don't know, a wish is a card that when you play it, it will say choose a card you own from outside the game, and either you're able to play it this turn, or you put it in your hand, or you put it into play if it's certain types of cards. So these are a category of cards. There's many cards that fit in this, over a dozen probably. Um, these cards all have a mechanic where they pull. They're able to retrieve a card from outside the game and put it into the game, so you can either play it or it's already in play or you've cast it, something of that nature. And then the and then that's the effect. You get a card from outside the game, and the game proceeds as normal with the new card that you got from outside the game. So why do I want wishes to work in Commander? Well, one, these are the only class of cards that we have in Commander that have a special rule that says they do not function as printed. Every other card functions with its rules text as printed and defined in the rule. We don't have um, rules that say they don't work as printed. Now, we may have rules that say if you're playing in a specific bracket, those cards are not appropriate for the bracket. If it's a two card combo, or it's mass land denial or slooping extra turns, that could be not appropriate for the bracket. It could be a situation where, um, but there's no other cards that, like, we don't say that, like, oh, if you're in bracket three, Armageddon's legal, but all lands that aren't creatures are indestructible. So if you play Armageddon, it doesn't do anything. Whereas with witches, we have that rule that says, oh, witches are legal cards if you could put them in your deck on a deck building website like Moxfield, and it will not tell you that they're illegal cards. Like, they'll tell you they're legal cards, but there's a special rule that says if you play a wish in a game, it doesn't do anything. It has to have a rule zero discussion with all the people in the game to determine if it works as appropriate. And I don't like that. I don't like that we have a special rule just for these cards. One thing that's also an issue is the outside the game design space has not been a thing that's like, oh, we touched this one time in Judgment. There's a cycle of the 5 original risks, and then we made a Glittering Wish. Like there's only a handful of cards affected over all of Commander, right? It's not something where it's like, oh, this is we're never making cards like this again. This is like a one-time thing. These are owing it. Every set, it feels like we have new cards that care about outside the game. Now, do we get one every set? No, we don't get that many. I mean, some sets we have two, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle sets has at least two cards that can pull from outside of the game in it. But we usually get one a year, one every 2 years, something like that. It's a relatively nice pace of outside the game cards, and so if the Wizards design team is going to continue to play in this design space, there's really no reason to have a special rule that says, "Hey, we can't do anything outside the game." There's a rule that says you can't do anything outside the game. We're going to we're going to be strict on that. We won't allow any breaches of the rules. It's like, well, we let other cards that have rules text break the rules, right? Like Dragon's Approach and Ravenous Rats. The cards that say you can play any number. Seven Dwarves. You can play 7 copies, right? Those work as printed, right? The rules text on the card oversees the format rules and lets you play unlimited copies of Dragon's Approach, even though it's a singleton format, right? That's how it works. So I think we really want wishes to work in the same way, where, hey, the rules text on the card says you get a card from outside the game and put it in your hand, or you put it into play, or you can cast it. Should those work as printed? And, well, the answer is, oh, they actually do work as printed. There's just no sideboard in Commander. So, like, you can put a wish in your deck, and you can play it, and it will allow you to grab a card from outside the game. But because you don't have a sideboard, there's no target for it to hit. And I think that is a little silly, right? Because companions, also in regular constructed magic, companions are cards that start the game in your sideboard, right? And we allow those in Commander. Now, granted, companions are very limited, right? If you play a companion, it's going to only have a few possible decks that can go in, right? It has to be, your deck has to be at least the colors, right? And then it has to meet the companion's strict restriction, right? Some companions are quite difficult to have to meet the restriction of, such as, Giganta or Obosh or other ones have that strict restriction that's hard to meet. And then some companions don't even work as they're intended to because we don't allow them to bend the format rules, right? Lutri gets banned because his companion condition is far too easy for decks to meet, so he's just banned as a companion. He used to be banned in total, but they've moved him to being banned as a companion recently. And then Yorion, who says you can have whose condition is, oh, your deck size is 20 cards bigger than the normal. Well, for some reason we don't allow Yorion to bend the rules of Commander in a way that says, well, this card says your deck could be, I could play this if my deck is bigger. Well, we say, oh, well, the 100 card limit is a limit, right? We can't bend that for Yorion. So they've made that concession for Yorion, but then they also have the wishes, which just don't function, right? They don't, like, you play a wish, it doesn't grab anything, it just goes into exile. Now, wishes used to work in a way where they actually did have a function, even though you didn't have a sideboard in Commander. And that's because instead of the exile zone existing and being officially a zone in the game of exile, exile used to be called removed from the game. So a card that was in exile was considered to be outside the game. So if you said, oh, I want to, like, play a deck that's about playing spells and then flashing the back, and then after you flash back a spell, it goes to remove from the game. I could then play a wish and get that card out of remove from the game and into my hand, and then play it and flash it back again. So there was there's a certain amount of utility to it. Now when they changed exile to be an in the game zone, wishes lost all function and just said, oh, you can't get an exile card, you can only get a card that's actually outside the game. Now, the rule, and the commander has a special rule that says if you would get a card from outside of the game, it does nothing, right? Unless it's a rule zero that the group agrees to. Now, I think that that's silly, right? We shouldn't have a specific rule that says only certain cards don't work. Like, it'd be like if we had a rule that was like, oh, if you would play a card that gives you an extra turn, you don't take an extra turn. Like, it just goes to be the next person's turn, right? But we have all these cards that Wizards keeps making that are give players an extra turn, and then would have a rule that says, oh, those don't work, in a way, right? It'd be the same thing if we had oh, you can't search your library. So if we had here, Wizards, we made a great card for you. It's Sakura Tribe Elder. It's 3 visits got reprinted. It's something else. None of those cards function in Commander. Like they're legal to play in your deck, but they have a special rule that says their function of the function of their text doesn't work. You can't search your you just there's a global rule that says you can't search your library. You can't take extra turns. You can't wish, right? Even though wishes are legal, right? Then I think we shouldn't have a global rule that says you can't wish, because it's design space that they keep making, and they keep making cards for it, right? It's not like this was a one-time thing that they did and then forgot about, and these are just old relics, and nobody's interested in them. Like there's like Graveyard Order is a kind of an old relic thing, and there's a limited number of cards that care about Graveyard Order. There's like 21 cards that care about Graveyard Order, but there's no reason to worry about that or act on that, because usually they're these cards are not played, and people keep Graveyard Order normally anyway. You're not normally rearranging the cards in your graveyard for any particular reason, and then usually they care about like the top card of the graveyard. So that's just, oh, what was the most recent creature that died, or the card that died, or something like that. It's they're not, the cards that care about Graveyard Order are not like, oh, what's like I mean, there's a few really obscure ones that, like, if this creature's in your graveyard and there's like 2 or 3 creatures above it, you can like activate an ability to like get it out of the graveyard. But that's not very common. That's very very old. Usually, it's just like, oh, what's the most recent thing that died? And that's what you care about. Um, so anyway, on to wishes. So how if I could make wishes work in Commander, well, how would I do it? Well, I think wishes could already work um, in Commander if we just said there's no sideboards, but you can pull from your collection. But you, of course, you can't slow play, right? You have to like, you play your wish, you go get your card. It takes 1 minute. That's all you have to get it, and then you can play the card, right? So move the game right along. So I think that's like a way you could have wishes work. That's how they do work in casual games with no sideboard rules. Is wishes pull from your entire collection, so you would just have your binder, or you probably have like a stack of like, okay, here are the cards I'd like to wish for. Let me go through it. Oh, this one, get it. So I think we could already make them work that way. Now there are a couple complaints where people would say, okay, well, how do wishes work? Well, how do we make wishes work with the rest of Commander, right? Because if I'm just pulling from a stack or a binder, it's like, well, what if I already play a spell like Counterspell in my 99 of my deck? Can I play Cunning Wish and get a second copy of Counterspell to play? Because I own two copies of Counterspell, right? Could I do that? Well, it's like we don't want that. We don't want you to be able to get a card. What about, oh, can I play Glittering Wish here that gets a multicolor card? I own a Prophet of Crufix. Can I go get a Prophet of Crufix even though it's banned in Commander? Oh, we don't want it to work that way either, right? So we don't want duplicates. We don't want access to banned cards. We don't want anything where where you could have like a weirdness where we don't want anything like that, right? So the way you would do wishes in Commander, I think that makes the most sense, is just say, a deck can have cards that are in a sideboard that are you don't sideboard before the game, but these are just cards that can be retrieved by wishes, and it works the same way that Wizards of the Coast handles best of one games on their platforms, right? So if you play best of one games on Arena, decks can have cards in their sideboard. Now you don't get to sideboard before the match or during the match or make any swaps right into your deck. Like it's best of one. You just play the one game. But if you play a card that has a get a card from outside the game, you have a little board of cards. Now it used to be full 15, and they reduced it to 7 and best of one because they didn't want you to have a large amount of wish targets in a best of one game. They thought it would be in um, 75 card formats where you're playing best of three, having a wish board conflicts with cards you may want to swap in to the game, like in between games. So if I want to have like 4 shocks in the sideboard for my deck to like when I'm playing against goblins, to like sideboard in some shocks to kill goblins, that means I have less room for singleton wish spells that I can target. Now in Commander, of course, you wouldn't have that in between game sideboarding. You're just playing best of one, so you just need a reduced sideboard size. Now, how small should it be? Well, I think the sideboard can be as small as 2 cards. Obviously, you can't do just the sideboard side is 1 card, because then if I say, oh, I'm playing Burning Wish here and my sideboard is going to be 1 card, well, I just put the 1 card in the sideboard, and then there's really no point to it. I would just swap the wish out of the deck and put the card on my sideboard in the deck, and it would just cost less mana, right? And I would draw it. I'd have access to it the same way. So there'd be no reason to the sideboard side to be, 1 card. Now I think at 2 cards, right, we could go to 2 cards. That's where wishes get interesting. Wishes become sort of a create your own split card. So we've had split cards around for a long time. They usually we got rooms, we got all kinds of stuff that's split cards. They're pretty popular. People play them, and I think a wish as a create your own split card is pretty interesting, right? Because I could have, I could get a counter spell, or I could get card draw, right? So it's one side of my split card is one, and one side's the other. So that wishes actually become actual playable cards at 2 sideboard size. Now I think if you go to 3, then that's also an option where you have sideboards that are sufficiently big so that wishes became like a create your own. You have this little toolbox of 3 cards, and it goes up from there as to how many you would want for your wish size. Now I think that like one argument that gets brought up about wishes and people not wanting to use them is that if you had if you have a very large sideboard size, um, you can play these very narrow silver bullet cards that just completely ruin someone's deck, right? You play it like they're on mono white, and you get a card that says destroy all white creatures, or you get a card that says um, all planes are destroyed, or something of that nature. And so it's something that's like, oh, well, you wouldn't play this narrow color hoser in your deck normally, but here you are, you're able to wish for it, and so it doesn't have that cost of like deck space uh, into that. And that's why I think you don't want to have this very large sideboard. You don't want to have a sideboard size that's like, you don't want it to be 20 or 15 or or 12 even. You want it to be, between 2 and 7, I think is the maximum amount. I mean, if 7 is pretty generous. I think, and one thing I think you can do is if you have that 2 to 7 sideboard size, the CFP and Wizards, they're able to look at deck lists and look at deck lists that play wishes and look at the cards that those wishes would have in their sideboard, because they're, this information is available on deck building websites like Archidect and Moxfield and other ones, right, where they have all these huge piles of deck lists that people are making, and then you can see, okay, well, what are the cards that people are actually wishing for? Like if I look at Burning Wish, and like Burning Wish is grabbing Boiling Seas and Flash Fires to kill all lands, right, and in bracket 2 or 3 games, I'm thinking, okay, that's probably inappropriate use of Burning Wish, right? That's the thing. And so that gives the CFP a level adjustment where they can say, oh, we had sideboard size at 6, and then we saw too many color hosers being played in the sideboard, and we didn't like that. So now we're making the sideboard size 4, or we're making it 3, right? We're gonna adjust it downward so that people are playing the cards we want them to get with wishes, and not just this smorgasbord of color hate and narrow hosers and things like that. Now, why do I think having wishes be able to get these narrow cards is a good thing? Well, a lot of cards in Magic that are made and printed are printed actually as sideboard cards, right? There's no, you would not play them in your main deck of your 60 card or 75 card deck if you unless like the deck they were good against was some crazy dominant deck that was a huge percentage of the metagame, right? You want to be like, oh, well, the metagame is, this deck and this deck is this deck, so I need, removal and this and other things, but then my sideboard is there to help me. So like my sideboard is, oh, I'm playing against a deck that plays big creatures, so my burn spells aren't very good, right? Because I can't kill big creatures, so I get to I get to like board out my small little creatures or my small burn spells that deal 1 or 2 damage, and I get to put in, okay, now let's put in some black kill spells, right, that don't care about the creature size, right? Let's put in a white kill spell like that can just kill a creature, exile a creature like an Oblivion Ring, right, regardless of size. So we want to have things like that are available and can be gotten with wishes. And I think that like it does, like when we say, oh, the threat is someone will play a narrow color hate card. Well, narrow color hate cards are already legal and already see very little play. Like we can look at the salt data on EDH Rec and see that while these cards are legal in the 99 of decks, people are opting not to play them. Now, part of that could be bracket restrictions, right? People that are playing in um, bracket 3, bracket 2 are, they're discouraged from playing, mass land denial spells or like hard lockdowns or things of that nature because of the nature of the brackets, right? People in bracket 4, of course, they don't have those same restrictions, but then, they're playing pretty powerful decks themselves. So I feel like if you are playing bracket 4 and you get blown out by a Boiling Seas, right? Well, maybe your mono blue deck did deserve it at some point, right? It's not like you were playing, happy merfolk fun time, no degenerate stuff. You're playing, pretty powerful bracket 4 stuff, pretty, even in bracket 5, pretty powerful stuff, right? Where there's no things like that. And even in like a games like bracket 5, there are color hosers that are just played because the colors see so much play. So you'll see things like, well, Carpet of Flowers isn't exactly a color hoser, but you'll see things like Carpet of Flowers, and you'll see cards like Red Elemental Blast and Pyro Blast because there's so much blue in the format that of course people are going to play those color hosers that are good against the color blue, right? So, but I do want wishes to work. I think the sideboard system is best. It does remove the duplicate problem, right? Because if I obviously if I have like a Blasphemous Act in my main deck, I can't wish for a second copy of Blasphemous Act, even though I own one. It also lets the deck building system see that. So of course, if I have like a wish, and I'm able to if I play Cutting Wish and I want to go get Boil, right? I'm not able to do that and say that my deck is bracket 3, right? Because it's gonna the deck building website's gonna scan my deck and say, hey, you have Mass Land Denial right here in your sideboard. That's retrievable by your wish, so your deck, your deck technically does have Mass Land Denial, so it's going to be a higher bracket than you probably want to play, right? So those are going to be things that like that. So it stops ban cards, it stops duplicate cards, and it stops those it stops narrow color hosers that would count as Mass Land Denial or some other appeal from being in sideboards of decks where they don't belong. So I think that's the thing about the sideboard system that's good. Now, how big should the sideboard be? I mean, I think 3 is small. I think you go up to 7. I think there's plenty of originality and things in there. Now, one thing that gets mentioned with wishes too is what happens if you steal a wish. Like, say I'm playing a deck that casts the top card of my opponent's deck, and they have a wish, and then what happens if I don't have a wish board? Well, I mean, this happens a lot with normal Magic, right? Well, one, we do have cards that make stickers and attractions. I know that cards that make stickers and attractions are not that popular, but if you do have a card that uses stickers or attractions, you're supposed to have your own stickers and attraction deck that you put out before the game. It's like 10 cards, and you have to like shuffle it, and then like get only 3 sticker cards or attractions. You have to shuffle it, right? So you have that deck prepared. You're not able to use your opponent's sticker deck. That's not official in the rules. So we already have cards where if you're not prepared with your own deck prior to the game begin, if you happen to, I stole the name sticker goblin, I don't have it in a deck, I'm not going to get to add mana. It just doesn't do anything, right? So that's the official rule of how that card would work if you stole it and you didn't have a sticker deck, right? Now, other thing about wishes is if your deck doesn't have a sideboard, that's fine, right? Wishes usually tend to grab narrow cards, right? So this one can grab multicolor cards, this grabs instants, this grabs sorceries. So if I'm playing a deck and I have my own wish in the deck, like I'd want to use all my sideboard slots for sorceries for my Burning Wish to give it more options. So if I happen to somehow gain control of someone else's Cutting Wish and play it, it doesn't matter because I wouldn't have any instants in my sideboard anyway to grab. Now, if I was playing a deck that did dedicated stealing, maybe that would be something where I'd want a sideboard where it would have, one sorcery, one instant, one creature, one artifact, one enchantment, one, maybe not a planeswalker. I don't think there's a wish for planeswalkers. Like a multicolored card. I want to have like one of everything that just covers my bases in case I steal a wish. I think that's like a thing you could do if you're playing a theft deck and you're not playing your own wishes. You could just have it be this like just assortment of I got a wish, cool, I'll just get my one instant from the sideboard, my one sorcery from the sideboard. That's an option. Now, one other thing about well, what if I steal a wish and I don't have a sideboard? Should I be able to go through my collection, like my binder, and pick out something? I think if we're playing with the sideboard rules, you really shouldn't have that as an option. It should just be, oh, you don't have a sideboard? Well, the wish doesn't do anything. And people will say, well, that's not fair, right? I stole this spell. Shouldn't I get to cast it? And it's like, well, we actually have pretty similar attitudes to that with certain other spells, right? And those are going to be the spells with X in their mana cost, right? So if you have a situation in which, oh, I've stolen a spell, right? Oh, it lets me cast it. Well, let's say it's an overload spell. Well, maybe I can cast it, but I'm not able to overload it, right? You can only overload like if you play it from your hand, right? You just get the one effect, right? Mizzium Mortars to deal 4 damage. I don't get to overload Mizzium Mortars with a steal. It could be a situation where it's like you've stolen a Hydra, and it's like, oh, you steal this creature, you can play it without paying its mana cost. Well, it's a 0/0, it costs X green, right? And it enters with X counters. Well, because you play it without paying its mana cost, you're just paying it for 0, right? You're playing the spell for 0 mana, and then that will result in a a 0/0 Hydra. So like, do you want to even play it and just put it in its owner's graveyard, or do you want to just not play it and just leave it in exile? So I think we already have situations where there are where if you steal a spell, it could be an X spell, it could be a name sticker spell, it could be an attraction, and if you don't have the kind of preparedness to have the sticker deck um, or the attraction deck or the sideboard or something like that, this spell just is not going to do anything right away anyway. So I'm not really concerned about like the very narrow corner case of, oh, you stole a wish, okay, well, um, let's let you look through your binder. It's just like, well, no, it just doesn't function. It's the same thing as just like, you didn't have a sideboard. Well, it's just going to be like if you stole a Hydra that costs X and you can't pay the X because so it just enters as a 0/0. So unless you get a benefit from a creature entering or dying, you're just not going to cast the spell, right? Um, so I think we already have it like the rarity of stealing a wish would be and having it not function would be perfectly acceptable and in line with the rarity of, oh, great, I managed to steal your um, villainous wealth with a spell, but I can't put any X into it, so I'm just the villainous wealth doesn't do anything, right? And X spells are way more popular than um, you know it happens all the time with X spells where you steal an X spell, it doesn't do anything. So I don't buy the, well, if you steal a wish, it just feel bad, and we can't have feel bads in the game. I think we already have enough feel bads where there's really no reason to adjust it. Now, my most played deck is my mono red control deck, and I would love to put Burning Wish in it. I've got one here ready to go in case we change the rules to allow wishes. So let me do a little experiment and say, okay, let's assume I had a slot. I put in Burning Wish. Well, what would my sideboard size look like? Well, let's have it be 7 cards, right? And I'm gonna list my spells that I want to put in to my sideboard of my red deck, and we'll see that, like, look, it's not going to be a degenerate sideboard. So the way I'm pulling this list is I'm going to my Moxfield link for my deck, and I'm just going to go to my considering, and I'm going to look at the spells that I have, and I'm going to say, okay, would I put this in if I was making a deck? Well, first spell I see that I absolutely 100% would include is Shatterskull Smashing, right? It's an X spell sorcery, and you can play it as a land. Now, why would I play this? Why would I get this with a wish? Because it's a MDFC that could possibly be a land. So if I have a situation in which I keep a hand that has 2 lands or has some amount of lands, and it's not coming together, and I need another land. This is like the perfect card to, oh, we could just wish we can get a land. I think that would be a great use of all the wishes to always have one land in your sideboard that you could grab with a wish, right? It's for red, it's Shatterskull Smashing. Blue's got their own thing. I'm sure Living Wish has its own creatures that I can grab. I think that's a great use. Now, what's another card that I would consider? Vandal Blast is my second option. Wait, you don't play Vandal Blast in the main deck? Yeah, I don't. Vandal Blast is like a card that seems great, and then you play it a lot, and you're like, it's really not that great because you don't play against artifact decks that often that are dedicated artifact decks. And then when you do, you don't normally need to just be like, boom, Vandal Blast, kill like kill 4 of their artifacts, and they lose everything, and then your other opponents are just like, well, I lose my 1 Soul Ring, or, oh, I lose like these 2 random clue tokens that I wasn't really doing anything with. And then it's a card that, like, it doesn't have a lot of impact unless you're playing against artifact decks all the time. So Vandal Blast is a card that I've had in my deck, and I've just had it be a bad card too many times to want to play it. So of course I cut it, and of course it's a perfect card for a sideboard, right? It's this very narrow effect, good against the, oh, hey, look, I have 5 Thopter tokens, and they're all pumped, so they're all like 5/5 Thopters. Oh, can't Vandal Blast help me? Yeah, that's a perfect opportunity for Vandal Blast to come in. Now, what would be my next card? Well, I like the idea of having a board sweeper in the sideboard. Now, for me, I already play Blasphemous Act and Star of Extinction and other big board wipes in the main deck. So that does limit my options somewhat for a sideboard, right? So my third card would be Chain Reaction, right? My Chain Reaction will be number 3. Chain Reaction is a spell for 4 mana. You do X damage to each creature, or X is the number of creatures on the battlefield. Now, why wouldn't this card be in my main deck? Well, it's a card that isn't very reliable all the time. Chain Reaction is the kind of card where it does a great Wrath of God impression when you're against certain decks and it's like a 4-player game, there's 10 creatures out, and you just go Chain Reaction, kill all the creatures, right? Now, Chain Reaction does have the downside of, hey, maybe it's late in the game and I'm in a 1v1 and I draw my Chain Reaction. And it's like, well, my opponent only has 2 creatures, they're both 8/8s, right? So my Chain Reaction does nothing, right? Where if I drew Blasphemous Act, right, that would be a way for me to get back in the game and kill the creature. So Chain Reaction would be my third card. It's a wrath in certain board states and not others. Now, how about number 4? If I'm picking my fourth card to put in, well, that would be Disrupt Decorum. I think Disrupt Decorum is a good card to go to creatures you don't control, but it's very narrow in the board states at which it's good, right? Because you have to have your opponents have to be in a state where they're very threatening, right? They have a lot of big creatures and are threatening each other with those creatures. That's a rough place to be, right? Where they have all this power to threaten each other. Disrupt Decorum's a great card to put in it. Some people would probably play it in their main deck if they're a Go deck already. I think it's a great sideboard card. I'd like it. Now, what's next? Now, I already put Chain Reaction in. I think my 5th card will be. I think I'm going to pick Chandra's Ignition as the 5th card. Now, why would I pick Chandra's Ignition? Well, Chandra's Ignition, of course, it deals damage. If you have a large creature, it hits. It's another Wrath where I've got a 10/10. My 10/10 will deal 10 AOE damage to each creature, each opponent. Now, I think that is a pretty good sweeper, right? It's Chain Reaction is the other one, where it's like if there's a lot of creatures to play, Chain Reaction is good. Standard Edition is if I have a big creature, it's good, but it also hits players. Now, my option for that slot would be a little bit of competition because there's also the Nibble Helm of Flame card from Final Fantasy, where it's basically the same thing. You pick a creature you control, it deals damage power to each other creature, right? That spell also has flashback, where I can flash it back to deal damage and then draw cards. To do it. But I think that Chandra's Ignition be able to hit a player, even though it's 1 more mana, just hit opponents, is a nicer position to be in. So that'd be card 5. If I'm looking at card 6, my pick is Insurrection. Insurrection is also a very it can be a card that can end the game right away, but it can also be a card that's extremely narrow and doesn't work all the time where you want. Because, of course, you kind of have to let your opponents get very out of hand for Insurrection to be the card that ends the game right away. Because normally your opponents, okay, they have, 10 tokens. 10 tokens to win the game, but they're 1/1s. It's like, well, if they play Craterhoof and make all the tokens 11/11s, or 12/12s, right? Because Craterhoof's a creature. Then they could end the game. But if you just Insurrection the 10 tokens, usually those 10 tokens are not going to be able to just punch through and end the game right away. So you have to let the board get really, 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 really out of hand before Insurrection does anything. Right. So Insurrection is going to be like the card that, oh my gosh, this guy's got a creature with 27 counters on it. Oh my gosh, this guy's got, 2 12/12s. Oh my gosh, this guy just, he's only at 18 because he just took a big hit from the 27 power creature. That's when a card like Insurrection wins the game, but it's kind of a card that I found that when I put it in my deck, I don't think it actually, when people say it's the red game ender, it's just the red Craterhoof, you play it, you win. My experience has been that it's not that. Usually people have they'll have If you insurrection, they'll have removal they can use on their own creatures. They may have sack outlets. They may have a fog or something that prevents you from winning. And then what you've done is you've just handed all these creatures back to all your opponents after you attack with them. And if you didn't win, they're all mad at you. So you're probably just immediately dead to the big creatures you're trying to end the game with, right? So you can have weird situations like that where I don't think insurrection is that great a card, but it would be a card that I wouldn't mind paying 10 mana for, to wish for it and then play it. If for some reason the game got so out of hand that I felt that, okay, I can play Insurrection and win, right? That would be my sixth card. And if I had to go for a seventh card, right, number 7, my pick would be Crackle with Power. I think it's the best red X spell that exists. There's other options in the red X category. There's something like Jaya's Immolating Inferno that hits X targets. But I think Crackle with Power hits 3 targets. But I think Crackle with Power is the best option for an X spell in red that I would want to play. And it's also kind of like this is a super late game finisher. I just have a ton of mana. I'm going to play Burning Wish, go get Crackle with Power, play Crackle with Power, deal a bunch of damage. Now, if I had a slot for Burning Wish, would I want to play the red spell Wish as well? That can just let me, play a card for from outside the game. That's a tough question because Burning Wish allows you to put it in your hand, so you could play it later. Like I could Burning Wish on turn 2 for something and then play it later. Whereas if I play Wish, I have to have the mana right then to do it. So I'd have to pay 3 for Wish and then play my Disrupt Decorum for 4 the same turn in order for it to work. So it's an option. I think I would stick to the one that puts it in my hand and lets me play it at a later time, even if I'm trying to have like a big turn where I Burning Wish for Chain Reaction and just play it right away to sweep up all the creatures, right? That could be like a situation like this. Now, granted, this is my red deck. Now, did I say that I would play, Boiling Seas or Flash Fires or any of like these color hate cards or like a really mean card like Wake of Destruction or World Fire or things like this that are they're mass land denial? No, I didn't. My deck's bracket 3. I'd like to keep it bracket 3. I don't think it really makes sense to ratchet it up to bracket 4 for any reason. That's not a card that I would. Those aren't cards that I want to play, and uh, and that's just not a situation where I want to be in, where I have these powerful cards that are able to. Or I'd be like, oh well, my deck's bracket 3, but if I get my wish, I can wish for a bracket 4 stacks piece or a card that just ruins you and then you can't do anything. So that would be what I would do for my sideboard in my mono red deck, which is my most played deck. I do think wishes should work. I do think we continue to get outside the game um, access with cards that have that care about outside the game, and I'd really like it if the CFP at some point decided that, hey, Commander, you should have a legal sideboard um, for to allow wishes to work. It could be 2 cards, it could be 3 cards, it could be 7 cards. I mean, I don't think I would pick any other cards that I listed. I think I'd cut it down. I think I'd always have a 1 land in my sideboard as long as it was 3 cards. If it was 2 cards, I might have to drop the land. But I'd really like the ability to, wish for a land if you're in a pinch and you need that, MDFC that you can play as a land. That would be my sideboard. I think it's fine. I think it's, great that Magic would have this um, opportunity to allow cards to work as printed, and I think the fact that sideboards would exist would, you're not going to have a situation um, in which oh someone resolves a wish and they're like flipping through a binder for 5 minutes to be like, oh, I need a spell that like it needs to kill like a land and an artifact, so I gotta go find my instant that does that. And it's like, okay, well, what card is that? It's like, well, it's this obscure common from 15 sets ago that does that and lets me play it, but I don't have it on me. It's just in a box or in my binder somewhere that I'm like looking for it. So I think the sideboard avoids a lot of problems and makes decks clean. And then the fact that the CFP can either have the sideboard size be like 7 cards, could be a big nice big sideboard, or they could say, oh, let's make it 4, or let's make it 2, right? They could like slowly like dip their toes into shrinking or expanding the sideboard based on player behavior that's observed through their collection of deck lists that they're looking at, right? So, I mean, CFP members play a lot of Commander. Obviously, they're not going to be having fun if they're like, here I am with my mono white deck, and oh, somebody sideboarded in Flash Fires and blew me out, right? And it's like, you know, I mean, that's something like Wish for a Flash Fires and destroy all their lands. Like that's not going to be fun for them. But at the same time, it's like that's a thing where it's like if you reduce the sideboard size enough, right? Those color hosers are going to be pitched out or just be played by the people who really, really want to play a one-off color hoser in their deck to make it like a bracket 3, bracket 4 deck, right? For that kind of thing to work. And I think this is the kind of thing where it's like it's kind of a win for everybody. Like wishes get to be legal. You get to have extra cards in your you get like you're not so pinched on deck slots where you're like, oh man, it's really hard for me to like choose between this card and this card for like I've got 3 slots left and I got like 5 cards I want to put in. Well, easy is just put in a couple, and then a couple of the cards that you're really stuck on, those can go in your sideboard, right? And then those are cards where it's like if you're playing a wish and you can grab them, great, right? You're like, oh, now I can test it out, and I can be like, oh, well, do I really like it when I wish for this card? Maybe that card should be in the main deck. Do I really like it when um, oh, I've drawn my 10 mana sorcery for the third game, and I don't get to cast it because I don't get that many times. Maybe that's the kind of thing I should have in the sideboard, where it only comes in certain situations where I have the wish and I have enough mana, and I'm able to wish for my 10 mana spell and really do the work I want with it, and it's not just a dead card in my hand, the like it is the other 9 out of 10 times where I draw it, right? So I think this is like the thing where wishes open up a lot of stuff. There's cool aspects to them. They're cool, beloved cards by people. I think there's like a way where if wishes were always legal, no one would be talking about um, no one would be saying, "Oh, we should ban wishes," right? They would just be used to, "Oh yeah, decks have a sideboard. It's 5 cards, right? You don't get to switch them out at the start of the game. They're just in your sideboard. And you're able to go, wish for a card you want, right? That would just be a regular default rule. No one would question it. Now, um, now I think we are this way because the original rules committee didn't want wishes to work. I think that was, at the time they saw wishes as, there's only 5 of them from Judgment. There's like some old cards that make reference of outside the game, but Ring of Maroof is not exactly a great card. No one's really playing it. We'll just have the rule that says wishes don't work. But it becomes really hard to justify that in a more modern era of game design where you're like, oh, here's my new set. Oh well, oh great, I cracked the mythic. Oh, it's an awesome mythic for 60 card standard, right? Where I have a sideboard that can get I can wish for a card for the sideboard, but it doesn't do anything because my deck is because I play Commander and Commander doesn't do anything. Like they keep making wishes in formats. They keep putting things that use outside the game, like the whole learn mechanic used outside the game for 60 card formats. And I think we might as well standardize the rules. Have Commander have a small sideboard. It accommodates the people that want to pay wishes. I don't think everyone has to play wishes. I think there are plenty of decks that don't want wishes. Like I said, I looked at my red deck, and I was able to come up with my 7 card sideboard for a red deck if I wanted to put in a wish. What would my 7 card sideboard be? Now, when I looked at my white black deck, which is an aggro deck, I didn't think I wanted to play a wish at all because both the wishes are in white and black are high mana cost or something else about them. Like the black one has a pretty steep life loss penalty, and I thought if I there's no way I want either of these. Like, there's no way I'm gonna like want to play a wish and then play the spell, or like just tap out for a wish and then next turn play the spell. Like there's nothing that's an artifact or enchantment or just any card that I would want there. I'm just gonna play the deck normally. There's no reason for that to run a wish. So I think it is the kind of thing where certain decks will want it, certain decks won't. It's wishes are really cool. They keep making more of them. They're cool cards. They're big mythics. You open them and then you're disappointed that you can't do anything with them because of Commander. So I think these are things that like, hey, let's make them legal. Let's have them be fun. Sure. And it's the kind of thing where once they are legal and once people are playing with them, that's where Wizards get the data. And I really don't mind if Wizards, if they're saying, hey, we got the data on wishes, it's awful, everyone's playing them, and everyone's just getting color hate cards, right? You're just casting, you're just going to get Boil, you're just going to get Flash Fires, you're getting Ruination, you're getting all these mean cards that you don't want to play in your main deck, but then you get them with a wish and it blows the game open. I don't think that will be the case. I think if that's the case, you could just say, hey, we've gone too far, let's reverse course, let's go back to normal. Let's have wishes not work. We tried the experiment, and we even tried like reducing the sideboard size. Like instead of 7, you could have a 4-card sideboard, or you could even have a 3-card sideboard. We tried reducing the sideboard cards, and people still wanted to play the narrow color hate cards in their sideboard and really ruin games. I think that's the thing where it's like, look, we gave you an inch. You abused the inch. We're taking away your inch, right? I think that's a thing that you could do if the data exists. Now, currently, since wishes are not legal, there's no data. However, there are plenty of play groups that have wishes that say, oh, my group plays with wishes. Now, I've never heard, now, every story I've heard about my group plays with wishes, that's the whole story. It's just my group plays with wishes. Oh, how's that go? It's great. We have whatever the rules are. We have a X card sideboard. It gets it, and it's like, oh, is it bad? It's like, no, the groups generally like playing with wishes. They have a fun time. You never hear horror stories of I joined a new play group. They play with wishes. I hate it. The group, they're always just wishing for like color hosers or bounce all green creatures or something that's like really unfun, and I really hate it. You never hear that. It's just like a tutor. Like a wish is like a tutor that has instead of being able to get, I mean, I know Demonic Tutor can theoretically get 98 other cards in your library, but theoretically you're not casting Demonic Tutor for, swap number 8, right? It has a certain amount of cards that it can grab, right? It's going to get, you may have, you're like, oh, I need a Wrath, I'll Demonic Tutor for Damnation. I need card draw, I'll Demonic Tutor for Praxton Arena. I need a finisher, I'll go get my 8-drop. I have one combo piece, I need the other one. Okay, I'll go do that, right? So it has like limited amount of targets that it can get, and you're just going to go get the best ones. I think wishes are the same way. They're going to have, if you have a sideboard size and it's 6-7 cards. Oh, funny meme, haha. Right, 6-7. But that's the funny thing is that people are not going to have their sideboard just be this, oh, in case I play against white, in case I play against green, I'm going to have hosers against those decks, right? They're just going to have it be like, oh, here's some cool cards, like sorceries or instants or multicolor or artifact enchantment or whatever that I wasn't able to fit in my deck. I'll put them in the sideboard and wish for them and see how they go. And sometimes you may find you're like, oh, Disrupt Decorum's amazing every time I wish for it. Maybe I should just be in the main deck. I was able to free up a slot. Let me just move that out and I'll put something else into the sideboard that I'm less certain about, right? That I could play the card that is good almost all the time in my main deck. So I think these are like options for how wishes would go. And I think it's a good idea. I think I would, if I was on the CFP, I'd absolutely vote, let's make wishes work. We could just have them use the normal sideboard rules. It prevents abuse of brackets. It prevents duplicate cards. It prevents banned cards. Those are all options. And I've heard that like, oh, it's hard to carry around like over 100 cards. It's like, I don't know about that. I mean, the amount of decks that I've seen that have like a stack like an inch high of tokens that they just carry around to like make with the deck. I think asking someone to carry, oh, can you just have like 6 cards sleeved, for your wish to retrieve, and they're all instants or they're all sorceries or whatever type the wish is. I think that's all good options. I do it. I think wishes, cool cards should work. They're the only card in the entire ecosystem of Commander, then we have a specific rule that says that just blanks out the text that says, these cards have no text box, right? They're just pictures with a mana cost. There's no text on any of them. They're legal to be played in your deck. Like you could put them in your deck, right? But if you play it, it doesn't function, right? They're the only ones that do that, and I think it's like, hey, we should actually be able to have them function normally, especially with them making new ones that do great stuff. I think there's plenty of cards in the Ninja Turtle set that have outside the game in their text. There's probably going to be new lessons in the next set that'll have outside the game. We should make wishes work. Come on, Wizards. This isn't that hard. It's the kind of thing where your CFP, if they make the decision and wishes work, in a way that is fine and fun and everyone's enjoying them, that's great. And if we're seeing the say, oh, wishes have just become color hoser cards, go get a narrow color hoser card and completely hamstring someone and make it so they cannot play the game. That's a great situation where you could say, okay, look, like these narrow hamstring cards, like the mass LD that everyone's worried about, that's always supposed to be bracket 4. You're not able to wish for that in bracket 3. These are already things that should be adjustable for using the bracket system and using wishes legality that I think is going to make it so they're fine. And could you make wishes game changers? I think just making wishes game changers puts a little safety valve on the wish cards in general that says, hey, if you want to play old Commander with no wishes and no worrying about sideboards, just play bracket 2, bracket 1. Those games are fine. They don't have to use wishes. Um, if you're playing, more, mid power and high power games, those are games in which wishes are fine. You could make just take all the wishes, make them game changers, let them see how they're played, right? Some of them may not be adopted. You can move those off the game changer list. Some of those may not be. Um, some of those might see pretty wide play if they're good, like Living Wish could see a lot of play. That's a card that might be pretty popular. In which case you could say, okay, well we're going to leave Living Wish as game changer, right? It's going to be the kind of thing you only see in bracket 3. And then of course if you're using it as one of your game changer slots, right? Then you don't have 3 other slots to play game changers with. Is Living Wish so powerful that you want to play it in your deck over some of the other game changers that you could have access to, like Smothering Tide, the Ristic Study, and Cyclonic Rift? Is that like you're like, oh, I'm gonna, or is it the kind of thing where you're like, oh, I really want to play all these game changers, so I'm gonna play a bracket 4, right, where there's a lot more strong and competitive decks, right? If you could have that option, so I think make wishes work, make them game changers, have the sideboard rules be there. People will just make sideboards and have fun with it. I think it'll be sort of a slow uptick on how it will work, but I think they're there, and I don't think you're going to see the, oh my gosh, they're just going to wish for flash fires and completely ruin my deck, right? Well, or boiling scenes and completely ruin a deck. I don't think you're going to see that if wishes become legal. There's already the social contract and the bracket system that are keeping those things in check. And I think that, like, hey, casting a wish for, like, oh my gosh, it's a super late game, everyone's low life, I cast my wish, I go get my crackle with power, I kill my opponents. I think that's a cool thing, right? I mean, it'd be the same thing if I had oh, this is Demonic Tutor. Oh, I drew Demonic Tutor, I played Demonic Tutor, I go get my, my X spell, I play, what's the one with Nicol Bolas on it? Whatever. They lose like 3 life for each card, for each X. You just play that for 20, and then everybody loses, right? I think there's this very similar in terms of effect, right? And I think wishes are great. We free up not having this extra rule that only exists to like punish cards. It frees up the designers to continue to design for outside the game. They're already doing that. There's plenty of outside the game cards that are coming out. There's probably even more coming out soon in the next set. We'll see. It lets the cards function as the designers intended, right? You play a card with learn, you can go get a lesson. You play a wish, you can go get a sorcery or an instant or a multicolor card or creature or whatever the type is outside the game, and then that's fine. And I think wishes would be perfectly acceptable. Let's make it happen. I think that's a good way to do it. All right, that's all I have for now, Commander players. So I'm going to see you I'm going to say bye. See you next time. I'm going to upload this to YouTube, and we'll see how it does. But I would like I have hot takes about unbans that I've mentioned. I have hot takes about the hybrid rules change that I mentioned. But the one thing I would really like is I think wishes have been requested for a long time for them to work. And of course, there has been no change about that. The previous rules committee said we're not changing wishes. And I think that now that we have the CFP and we have, you know, this new version of Commander, this is the time to make wishes work. They should work as printed. They'd be wonderful as printed. They could be game changers. That's fine. They'd be perfectly acceptable as game changers. And I think that they they would add a lot of fun to the format, especially when it's like, oh, look at this new mythic rare I just opened for the new set. It actually does something. I can put it in my deck, right? It would be, it could get one of my sideboard cards, right? And I think that's fun. So that's all I got. Y'all have a great day. Let's make wishes work, right? Let's have these. Let's not have a rule that just turns off a a few dozen cards for no reason, right? We already let every other card that has any possibility of being an exception, right? We let extort be go in monocolor decks. We let rats break the one of rule. We let companion work, even though companion is from outside the game too. We made a special companion zone just for commander that allows companions to work. We should make wishes work, and the easy way to do that is a sideboard, and that's perfectly capable of working with how Magic system is currently set up to allow sideboards. Right, so let's have these work. All right, bye everybody. See you next time.